to vaccinate its entire population before it would allow vaccine producers to export their products to Canada. What are countries doing to ensure their own supply? The US has a program called Operation Warp Speed, which aims to produce a vaccine faster than anyone else. President Donald Trump has said he hoped it would be available before the end of the year. The program has already announced that it's providing more than billions to pay for development, manufacturing and pre-orders or reservations for hundreds of millions of doses of promising vaccine candidates from US-based Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, Novavax, Pfizer and Merck, along with UK-based AstraZeneca. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit the world hard, and countries around the globe are anxious to get their hands on a vaccine as soon as possible in the hopes that it will bring a return to normalcy. Those vaccines are expected to be in short supply when they first hit the market, meaning not everyone will have access initially. Within countries, some groups will be prioritized for vaccination. But what about globally? Which countries will get the vaccines first? Many wealthier nations are already making bets on vaccines still in relatively early stages of development, with no guarantee that they will ever perform well enough to gain approval or protect their populations. That has many concerned about vaccine nationalism, where countries look out for their own interests at the expense of others. Here's a closer look at what wealthier countries are doing to ensure supplies for their own citizens, how that might affect other countries, how Canada might fare, and what efforts are being made to distribute a vaccine more fairly. What can countries do to obtain a vaccine first? There are a few different ways wealthier countries can try to ensure their own supplies. Provide funding for the development and manufacture of their own candidates to help speed it up. Manufacture a vaccine within their own country and prevent it from being exported. Make deals to reserve or pre-order large numbers of doses. What impact does that have on other countries? In previous pandemics, such as an H1N1 outbreak in 2009, wealthier nations were able to buy up the first batches, leaving no supply for lower-income countries. And even some richer countries, including Canada, weren't always first in line if they didn't have their own manufacturing facilities. During the swine flu outbreak in 1976, for example, the US decided. Similarly, the European Commission has a plan to use an emergency fund worth $2.4 billion, almost $0.7 billion CDN, to buy up to 6 vaccines in advance for 450 million people. Germany, France, Italy and the Netherlands have also signed a deal with AstraZeneca for over 300 million doses of its vaccine, which they say all EU members can participate in. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom has pre-ordered nearly 200 million doses from AstraZeneca, BioNTech/Pfizer and France-based Valneva. There are concerns such pre-orders could reduce the initial availability of vaccines in the rest of the world, which has happened in previous pandemics. The European Commission has specifically said it will not buy vaccines produced exclusively in the US, over concerns that might delay supplies to Europe. What is Canada doing to ensure its own supply? The federal government has created a $1 million fund to support vaccine clinical trials and manufacturing in Canada. It is also closely monitoring vaccine development efforts domestically and internationally and will work quickly to negotiate advanced purchase agreements with vaccine manufacturers to secure supply for all Canadians as soon as it is feasible, Geoffroy Legault-Thivierge, a spokesperson for the Public Health Agency of Canada, told CBC News in an email. However, as of July 30th, it hadn't yet announced any such agreements. The government has also announced it is ordering enough equipment, such as syringes, alcohol swabs and bandages, to give at least 2 doses of a vaccine to every Canadian when one becomes available. Still, experts warn that Canada currently doesn't have much manufacturing capacity for vaccines, even those developed in this country, many of which would be manufactured elsewhere and some of which would likely be licensed to foreign companies for manufacturing. Quebec City-based Medicago is the first Canadian vaccine candidate to begin clinical trials. But CEO Bruce Clark has said that his company's main manufacturing plant is in the US, meaning there's no guarantee that a supply would reach Canada in a timely manner. Guarantee is a strong word, Clark told the Canadian press in July. Strange things happen to borders in the context of a pandemic. Dr. Nani MacDonald, a professor of pediatrics and infectious diseases at Dalhousie University and the Oak Health Centre in Halifax, said Canada is a very small market, and we will not have a vaccine if the manufacturer doesn't apply for approval, said MacDonald, who has done research on ethical issues surrounding vaccines. In the past, some manufacturers have not prioritized Canada, she said. For example, the manufacturer of the chickenpox vaccine didn't apply for approval in Canada until it had already been available in the US for 5 years. Why should all countries have access to a vaccine? Because it's a global pandemic and our world is interconnected. Outbreaks in any country have the potential to travel to other countries and cause outbreaks there, MacDonald said. For you to be safe, your country needs to be safe and all other countries need to be safe. That's even the case if the entire population is vaccinated, she said, as a given vaccine usually doesn't work for everyone. Due to manufacturing and distribution constraints, when a vaccine first becomes available, there isn't expected to be enough of it to vaccinate the entire populations of even countries wealthy and lucky enough to have pre-ordered it. That means most of their populations could remain at risk for a long time if the pandemic isn't under control in other parts of the world. Outbreaks also tend to be worse and harder to control in poorer countries, posing a higher risk to both their own populations and the world.